welcome to our third virtual tour on the Sunday evening series that we began this year. It is called What Was Herzl's Favorite Emoji? It's going to be part virtual tour, meaning we're going to go to different places around the world, and part of it's going to be a lecture with slides. It's a bit of a combination, and we're going to be doing that for about 1 hour. After the editing, sometimes I manage to take off some time. So let's begin. We're gonna talk about the name, where this tour got its name from. It's quite an interesting story. If you take a picture at the cover, it shows you a very famous building in a drawing of a very famous person by a very important person, and we're gonna put all of these pictures together during this tour today. So let's begin with a little bit of background. We all know this gentleman in the picture with his quote, "If you will it, it is no dream," the namesake of the store, Herzl. And what does Herzl's favorite emoji have anything to do with Herzl? I mean, emojis didn't really exist when Herzl lived, did they? So let's get into the name of this tour. So if you take a look at these emojis that I spread throughout, each one of them could arguably have something to do with Herzl's mission. Now let's take a moment to use our imagination and see what these different ones are, except for the most obvious one, which is basically him with a shorter beard, right? So like, what are these things? How do they have to do with Herzl? So take a look. Let's start from the right, from the easier ones, and move to the more difficult ones. So we have a Hanukkah menorah with the Star of David, Jewish symbols. Hanukkah, also in modern Israel, is celebrated as a festival of Jewish glory and heroism. So that's very obvious, right? Then we have a Torah scroll. Okay, so our Torah, our tradition, a flag of Israel, which didn't exist in Herzl's time. We have the Jewish star, an olive tree, and milk and honey. So maybe olive oil, connections to Hanukkah, or a symbol of peace, maybe with a dove, right? Maybe I could have added that. So these are all obvious ones. But then let's move on to the left. So we have the lion of Judah, right? So that we'll see showing up later on. We have the beaches of Tel Aviv. We have building houses, and we have building cities. So a vision of what Israel is going to become. Even though at the time it was much less than that. It was a country called Palestine, which is basically under the Ottoman Empire, but the Jewish settlement there was relatively small. When Herzl came to visit, it wasn't such a positive visit for him. I mean, he was sick too; he was a bit under the weather, but that's besides the point. So you can go to the cafeteria or meat restaurant. I think it switched in Mamilla, where he stayed in that hotel overnight when he was in Jerusalem. But anyway, so this is Herzl. Why are we talking about emojis? Because of this exhibition, which was, I think, 3 years ago in the Israel Museum. It was there when I was visiting Israel, I think, like right before COVID hit. So we're talking 2020. And this exhibit called Emoglyphs or Emoglyphim is about the connection between Egyptian hieroglyphs or hieroglyphics and modern emojis, which really have a lot of similarity in terms of our psychology. And that's the interesting thing. We have a very famous saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? A picture can convey a message. And once we've developed smartphones that are able to actually make pictures as opposed to our old Motorola Sharks and so on, which basically just had text, you just like put a colon and a bracket and it looks like a smiley, right? Like you can get a lot more elaborate with that. And so you can send somebody a text, and just by adding a smiley or a wink wink, you completely changed the tone of the text. Communicating with pictures is very, very ancient. And this exhibit shows the connection between ancient hieroglyphics and modern emojis in terms of communication with pictures. So if you didn't see the exhibit in the Israel Museum, you can always look up online. There's some videos about it. There's pictures. This was an article that came out. And of course, there's the book in Hebrew and in English, which goes through a lot of the stuff. So this is an article that came out just about it in the New York Times. So it's really cool. And it was a really, really fantastic exhibit. And you see an example here in these two black columns, each one showing you the hieroglyph from ancient Egypt on the left and the modern emoji on the right. So look, for example, on the bottom left, the woman was like, I don't know. And then there's the hieroglyphics for, I don't know, right? Or a foot, moving, dancing, being excited, upside down, joy, all these things. So it's really cool. All right. And after the tour, I usually send you the recording with a follow-up, and there's some information there in the YouTube video, so you'll be able to catch up on some of the articles and things I'm going to mention and talk about. So this is where I got the idea, because in the museum, I decided to connect the idea of communication through pictures with Jewish symbols and the connection to Zionism, archaeology, history, and Jewish art. So I tried to come up with a cool name for the tour. When this exhibit was the first thing you see in the archaeology wing. And so I called it, what was Herzl's favorite emoji? And it was a very successful tour, and I still run this tour. So let's now jump into it. Okay, so we of course know this very famous image. This is the Arch of Titus, and that takes us to the first point on our virtual tour, which is of course the Arch of Titus. All right, so welcome to Rome. I'm sure you've seen let's take a little bit of a, just move out a little bit. Okay, I'm sure you've seen the images of the Arch of Titus with the flag of Israel on it from this week in a show of support. That was a very, very moving picture. That was last week. Time flies, and I posted that on my status and story, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. And there apparently there was this trend going around where people were asking, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? So I posted the Arch of Titus with the Israeli flag on it, and I said, when you talk to us about the Roman Empire, this is constantly on our mind, the Arch of Titus and so on. So let's move in and look at the symbols on the Arch of Titus. So courtesy of Antonio Miguel, who took this 360 view picture, let's see what's on the Arch of Titus. First of all, the less famous part, unless you've been there and you've seen it with your own eyes, you probably don't know what's on the other side of the arch. And on the other side of the arch, we have 4 horses pulling a chariot in a victory procession with King Titus, Titus, the son of Vespasian, sitting on the carriage being pulled, and the winged goddess of victory known as Nike is sort of flying on top of him, like showing him as the victor. So it's a little hard to see from this angle, but that's what is on one side. And on the other side is the menorah that we all know. Okay? What I want to point out is that the menorah became the most identifiable and iconic symbol of Judaism from the destruction of the Second Temple until today, with the recent introduction of the Star of David as a Jewish symbol. Whereas beforehand it comes from mysticism and other areas, but it wasn't a symbol of Judaism in the same way that the menorah was. And I want to show you that there are a few other icons and symbols which were symbols of Judaism that if you'd see them today, you'd go, huh? What? But those were symbols of Judaism. And I want to show you many examples of those. So what symbols are in this picture that we're missing? It's a little hard to see, which is why I'm going to switch very soon back to the slides. Okay, but it's right here. It's the Roman soldiers are carrying these 2 trumpets, the chatzotzot, which were probably made of silver, on top of a small little table with cups on top of it, which is probably the Shulchan Lechem Hapanim, the showbread table. Now let me show it to you as it was reconstructed by Yeshiva University's probe, which actually scanned the whole thing and identified the remains of the yellow on the menorah, with the assumption that this used to be colorful, like everything in the Roman Empire. All the statues were lifelike and colorful, and if it was painted, these are give or take an educated guess of what the colors would be on the day it was painted, because the next day it already gets dirty, right? So you see the Roman soldiers in this procession parading the treasures of the temple, and the titles that are written in Latin inside those signs are based on Josephus, who says what the procession contained. So Sacra Judeorum, Candelabrum Judeorum, and Legis Judeorum. So there's sacred Jewish artifacts. There's the candelabra, the menorah, of the Jews, and then in the back is the Torah of the Jews, which Josephus says was actually carried, but is not eternalized in the carving of the Arch of Titus, but apparently it was there in the original march. So you see the menorah, and you see on the right the Shulchan with the Chatzotzot, and that's the Shulchan Lechem HaPanim, and we're going to meet it again. Now, I want to point out that when this Arch of Titus was made, give or take around the time that Mount Vesuvius erupted, by the way, under Emperor Titus, a few years before, the menorah was not a symbol of Judaism. It was one of several Klei HaMikdash, one of the several temple vessels, which, because it stands out, it's so strange and different compared to a trumpet, which is just a trumpet, like everyone has trumpets, or it's just a table, like what's the big deal? This stands out. 7 branches, gold, it looks different. So because of that, perhaps it stuck, it was recognizable. Okay, we'll come back to this. Let's take a look at some icons. So the state of Israel came up with the emblem for the state, which we all know, which took 1-to-1 the menorah from the Arch of Titus, with the branches of the olives on the side, based on the prophecy of Zechariah, which we read on Hanukkah, which describes the vision of the menorah as a vision of power and resilience and rebuilding. Lo b'chayil v'lo b'koach ki im beruchi amar Hashem tzvakot. So that's a vision of the menorah as a symbol of strength and survival. And so that's what was used in the state of Israel. But more than that, we also have Herzl tied back in this interesting way. So this is the note of the 100 lira, which is the first Israeli money, which was then replaced by the shekel, and then replaced by the new shekel. And the new shekel, we're going to talk about one of the people who had to do with the design, but that's later. Now, look at the back of the banknote, and you'll see the menorah. See, it's right there. In the front, you have Herzl with a palm tree and some branches, and in the back, there's the State of Israel emblem, and there's like a Star of David in this very cool, curvy, artistic shape, surrounded by the 12 symbols of the tribes of Israel, Shivtei Israel. Now, I actually have one of them here. I just don't want to, trouble you and start pulling stuff out. But I actually have one, and if you live in Jerusalem, go on a Thursday to Binyan Klal, to the flea market, buy it for 5 shekels. They sell tons and tons of old banknotes. So I bought it for the Torah in the museum. Okay. Now, other symbols which are taken from the Arch of Titus or from the Roman destruction of Jerusalem is the coin minted by the Emperor Vespasianus, Titus's father, which shows a Roman soldier standing on top of the conquered kingdom of Judah, represented as a weeping woman underneath a palm tree. And it says on it, you can read it carefully, it says Judea Capta, captured Judea. And SC on the bottom of the left coin is simply saying that this was minted by the authority of the empire, because, of course, if you fake coins, you could be killed, right? So that's what the SC is. On the right is a special medallion minted by the Israeli Medallion and Coins Corporation, and they made a coin which takes the Judea Capta, but they switched the language and the symbols. Israel Meshuchreret, Israel liberated, 1948. So it's really neat when you're using a picture that carries a message based on what people know. And this is a coin, this is a medallion that you can actually purchase online. I mean, it's probably for like 50 shekels, I think. You could purchase it. So this is a Israel Meshuchreret versus a Yehuda Kvusha, a Judea Capta. So these are the ones that we know. Now this is like a teaser, because we're going to talk about ancient history and archaeology and images from ancient history and archaeology and how they were used in the service of modern Israeli Zionism and Zionist art, like the Bezalel Art School or the Zionist movement, the World Zionist Congress. That's what we're going to be focusing on today. So let's begin with Herzl, shall we? So this picture, I'm sure you've all seen, but let's actually take you 1 second to where this picture is taken from. And poof, I skipped. I saved you the jumping around part. We are on Shderot Rothschild Boulevard in Tel Aviv. in a pathway which is currently very well marked with stops along the way and QR codes and maps and lights on the floor and all that. It's called the Independence Trail, or Shvila Atzmaut, and you can just go step by step and go through the story of modern Zionism. So this house is right next to this horse whose name was Meira, which is also my wife's name, so we kind of joke about this. But this was the name of the horse of the mayor of Tel Aviv, who's the mayor was named Mayor, Mayor Dizengoff. I might be mixing up the horse's name, but like Mayor Meir or whatever, we made some jokes about it. I think it had a different name. Scrap that. I'm forgetting the name. But there's a funny name. Okay, so you could Google what was Mayor Dizengoff's horse's name. So Mayor Dizengoff was the mayor of Tel Aviv at the time of Israel's independence, and here is his house. This is where the story happened. If you've been here recently, you'll notice that it's completely under construction. I think they even knocked the whole thing down. They're redoing it. But this is Beit HaAtzmaut, and this sign where this was taken, it says Projekt Shikum Shimur V'Shidrug Beit HaAtzmaut, like there's a plan that's going to happen soon. It's already happening, where this thing was knocked down. Now, this building was the private home of Mayor Dizengoff. He lived upstairs, and downstairs was an art gallery, the Tel Aviv Museum of Art. And that's where he housed the Declaration of Israel's independence. This is the downstairs of Mayor Dizengoff's house. Okay? Now, you'll recognize a few characters here. You'll definitely recognize David Ben-Gurion standing up and using his iconic declaration, which you can find everywhere. Anu machrizim bazot al akamat medinat Israel. Erev Shabbat, Friday afternoon, May 14th, 1948, he declares Israel's independence. A few hours before when the British were completely out of the country and in which we were given permission to actually declare, he said, I'm doing this early, it's before Shabbat, we're making it happen. And he had to do it in Tel Aviv because Jerusalem was under siege. So now look at the picture behind him. Of course, we have Herzl. And I want to take us to this iconic image, speaking of communicating messages through pictures, okay? So this picture on the left, you all see what's going on in this picture, right? The building in the background, right? Right, that's Migdal David. But this is an artistic creation because it's based on a photograph which took place in Basel. But first of all, see this rug? You can visit the new Israel Museum. Sorry, you can visit the new Tower of David Museum, and they actually have a display in one of the new rooms, which they just reopened, of merch. All the merchandise that has to do with pictures of the Tower of David, and they have this tapestry made by the Bezalel Art School. So we're going to get back to that. But where does this picture of Herzl leaning over a balcony actually come from? It was photographed by the same artist who made this pamphlet, and this pamphlet was the invitation to the 5th World Zionist Congress. So we're going to put it all together now, but I want you to first just get the image because we're going to get back to this artist a lot. His name was Ephraim Moshe Lilien. Who's known also just as Lilien. He's a very renowned Jewish artist and illustrator who played a significant role in the Zionist movement. He was born in Galicia, but he ended up coming to Israel, and he actually had to do with the design of the new shekel. So we're going to get back to Lilien. We're going to see him a lot, okay? But just look at this image. It shows an angel pointing to the downtrodden Jew of the Galut, of the exile, who's surrounded by thorns, showing him, look, you can march into the horizon with your own cows on your own land and go down into the setting sun like a cowboy, right? Like in a Western. So this was the pamphlet of the invitation to the 5th World Zionist Congress. Let's go to Basel and continue that story. So let's start with the First World Zionist Congress. The First World Zionist Congress takes place in the Opera House, which is here in view in Basel, in the year 1897. 1897 is the first World Zionist Congress, which is Theodor Herzl, Max Nordau, Chaim Weizmann, all the important people are there. And they gather here. Let's jump into the opera. They gather to discuss the establishment of the Zionist organization and the formulation of the Basel program, which basically aimed at promoting the creation of a Jewish homeland in Palestine under international law. So this is where they're meeting. Of course, looked a little bit different back then, but we're in the same opera house, and they gather here. Now, I have one illustration from a newspaper at the time. Here it is, and you might be able to see that it's in the same room. Just to let it load for a moment. If it doesn't load, it's okay. I'm not going to make you wait so long. Okay, it's not loading. It's fine. So this is where the Zionist Congress happens. Okay, so that's established, and 5 years later, 1901, is the 5th Zionist Congress, and that happens across the street in the Les Trois Roues, or the Three Kings Hotel. And it's here at this hotel, which you're looking at, from this balcony, which you could, to this day, you can visit and take pictures there. I think Herzog recently took a picture there, the president of Israel. He was leaning over the balcony, overlooking the river, and Ephraim Moshe Lilien took that photograph that was then used for that iconic picture, right? So that was a picture that was taken by Ephraim Moshe Lilien, who, as we're going to see, is going to play a very important role in our tour of today, for today. Okay, so that was Basel. Now, towards the end of this tour, we're going to talk about the symbols, the icons, or the emoji, so to speak, that they used to design the flag of the first World Zionist Congress, or basically the World Zionist Congress, right? The organization. So we're going to see that flag a little bit later. One second, go away. Sorry, I got some stuff jumping up here. Okay, so let's delve now into some Jewish symbols, and I'm going to take you in a turning of events to ancient history, to the catacombs of Beit She'arim. Let's go to the catacombs. So back in Israel. Now, we are in the Beit She'arim National Park in the north. And in Beit She'arim is underground, this entire area, are catacombs, are tunnels with hundreds and hundreds of Jewish burials, not only Jewish, but many, many of them are Jewish. And this was a burial area during the Roman period in the time of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, who was buried in Beit She'arim. Some suggest that they know exactly where he was buried here, but it's a very, very vast burial area, catacombs. We're going to see some of the things they found here in the Israel Museum, but first let's go to the actual site. Okay, this is the iconic entrance to one of the many caves in Beit She'arim. And by the way, if you're a Kohen like myself, you should know that there are no remains in there. There should be no problem to actually enter in there. Occasionally, they'll find a new one, which they have to excavate, but they remove everything and bury it properly, because this place can be damaged and looted, and has been in the past. So out of respect for the dead, they actually remove any remains that they find to preserve them. So this is the iconic image. You're looking right outside. It's a national park. Let's jump inside and look at that. I'm sure this has been on several book covers and posters. I've seen it before. One of many. So there's a burial here, right? And lots of burials inside here. It's a cave. And here is a menorah. And there are hundreds of menorahs in this cave. This is probably the nicest one. It's iconic, but it tells you a Jew is buried here. That's what the menorah means in the year 200. It means this is a Jewish burial, or this is a Jewish something, right? That's how you stamp on it. If we look around, we might find a few more. I'm not so sure how well we can see them, but like there's scratches on the wall here. Sometimes you'll see a menorah, right? But you can Google this and I'll send you some references. So Beit She'arim is famous for having lots of menorahs on them, and sometimes even inscriptions in Hebrew that tell you stories or tell you who was buried here, what was his name, and you see that it was all looted, right? It was destroyed, damaged, so there's not that much to find here anymore, all right? So this is Beit She'arim. Here is a place where here lay Atio, the daughter of Rabbi Gamliel, son of Nehemiah, who died a virgin at the age of 22, and Ation, the daughter of Rabbi Yehuda, son of Rabbi Gamliel, that died at the age of 9 and 6 months. So that's what it says here in Hebrew. You can see Hebrew letters, right, that you can read. Like if you can spend more time here, you'll actually read it. Here it says a Shisha Chodashim on the bottom. Okay, so this is Bet She'arim. So we're now seeing that the menorah is, after the Churban, after the destruction, becomes a symbol, an icon, or for the purpose of our Torah, an emoji, which carries a lot of weight. It has a lot of history, but it means Jewish. Now let's go to the Israel Museum, where they display the things that they found here. Not the bodies, just the other things. All right, the Israel Museum, here we come. So we're in the Roman period. I'm sure you've actually seen the news about this was actually the news right before the war broke out. So, this is what everyone was talking about. And then they completely forgot that some American tourists came here and decided to break these statues, saying this is Avodah Zarah. So this is the statue that he knocked down. This one. And there was another one of a Sphinx somewhere here. I don't see it. It's supposed to be right here, but when they filmed it, it wasn't here. So this is actually, I was in the museum when it happened. All right, but we're going to go now and focus on the stuff from Beit She'arim, like these. These are from Beit She'arim. These are figures that represent people that were buried there. These ones were pagan. They weren't Jewish. But this is a Jewish coffin. Now, how do you know? It's very, very simple. Let's get a little bit closer. Even closer, and take a look. That's a bad view. Here we go. You see the menorah, right? Now, in addition to the menorah, these are symbols that are a little harder to see, which is why I'm going to rely on other artifacts to show it to you. But I want you to just kind of get an idea. Is right here on top is a square that repeats itself with 4 separate Jewish symbols that usually travel together. And by travel together, I mean, when you have one of them, you're probably going to have 2 or 3 of the other ones. It's very, very common. I'm going to show you dozens of examples in a few moments. Okay, so what exactly are these symbols? Let's see if I can get a little bit closer. Either way, we're gonna look at some other stuff that's right there. Let's see if you can see it. Sort of, not so well. So let's look at these tombstones. So there's 3 tombstones here on the left with red ink, which are from around the year 500, and I know that exactly because there's a date on it. Right now, I'm not going to talk about the dating system, but it basically is dating to years to the destruction of the temple. So it's going to say like year 423 to the destruction. So just add 70 and you have a date. There's a few other things there. And this marble one written in Greek that looks like it says Toto is actually, it says topos, which has to do with a location. Like here is buried. Topos, Marinos, something. Here is some so-and-so buried, but this is Jewish. Now look at the different Jewish symbols. See how many Jewish symbols you actually recognize. I'm going to help you out a little bit, okay? Sorry, wrong painting. Here we go. Menorah, right? You all see the menorah, right? But let's move that. Now, right here, you see that? That's a shofar. Then we have this funny thing, which is a lulav and etrog. And finally, this is the one that drove everyone crazy, and nobody figured out what it is until they figured it out. And then it's like, oh, how did we not think of that? Okay. This, I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. If you know what it is, that's fine, because we actually did talk about it in one of our previous tours, but not everybody was on those tours. So if you've seen it, that's great. If not right now, I'm going to show you that it appears in these as well. There's symbols. You can see the menorah clearly. On the bottom left of this big, really poorly drawn menorah is a little lulav and etrog, poorly made, as well as here. There's more. So these symbols are showing up everywhere. But more than that, I'm going to take you further. Let's go to the Byzantine period. See if I can get downstairs. It's enough to see this. Here's a menorah with lions. And beyond it is a mosaic floor where you see a menorah, you see a shofar, and you see that square thingy, that weird thingy, right? So now let me show you what that actually is. But let's contextualize it, okay? We came from the Arch of Titus, where we first see the menorah. We're going to see older ones, but that's where we first see the menorah on this tour. Then we move on to around the year 200, like 130 years later. It's already a famous Jewish symbol. Now we're in the year 4 to 600, what's known as Tkufat HaMishnah VaTalmud, or the Byzantine period, basically when the Roman Empire in the East, in Israel, became Christian. So that's where we're at right now, the Byzantine period. So that's a church, but this is a shul, right? You see the menorah, and there's more there's menorahs. There's dozens of menorahs in this display because it's that period where menorahs are famous, right? And now I want to show you. I want to show you the other symbols. Hang on. I'm going to do that using, one second. This is the wrong, okay. I sort of changed my how I was going to do this. Okay. So let's look at the other symbols. Okay. So here's the menorah, and notice that there's other things on the Arch of Titus that we sort of skipped through. One second. Give me just a moment. I sort of messed up the order a little bit. What I was going to do is before going to those other symbols is focusing just on the menorah. Okay, so let's keep things simple so it doesn't get too complicated. Let's talk about this picture from the cover. We'll talk just about the menorah. We'll see some really cool stuff, and then we'll go to the other symbols that we saw. All right, I think that will keep it simple. Everybody sees the picture of the Bezalel Art School? Yeah, Yoni, Tani, thumbs up. Okay, thank you. So on the left is the image of the Bezalel Art School for art, the School for Arts and Design, named after the legendary artist who designed the temple vessels, or the Mishkan, named Bezalel. Yes, Ariel, there's a question. Oh, that's just yes. Okay, gotcha. So on the right is a painting made by Zeev Rabban, who we're going to see more of his art as well. He's one of the Bezalel Art School's first painters, just like Ephraim Lilien. And there's a picture of the artist Bezalel, dressed biblically, leaning against the temple menorah, the one from the Arch of Titus, and summoning this gentleman who is sitting and leaning on the balcony. And what it says here in the little picture is Yerushalayim habnuya, chalom behakitz, an awakening dream of Jerusalem rebuilt. And on the little image below there, next to the emblem, is the name Bezalel Schatz, or Boris Schatz. Now, who was Professor Boris Schatz? I'm gonna tell you who he is, and then I'm gonna take you to this building that it's making a picture of. Okay, it's a really great story. So Boris Schatz, just a little bit of background, and of course I'll send you more information later. He was a sculptor and a painter, and a prominent figure in the development of this concept of Jewish art and culture before the state of Israel. So he was born in Lithuania in 1867. He comes to Israel, and in 1906, before World War I, he makes the first Jewish art school called Bezalel, Bet Sefer Bezalel, which, by the way, their museum ended up becoming the Israel Museum in the 1960s. So there's a connection between the Israel Museum and the Bezalel Art School. Okay, so that's kind of cool. So just a little bit of background about him, and then we're going to go to we're going to go to the building. So he made a lot of important stuff, like in the world of art and sculpture. They say that he actually made a sculpture of Herzl who's with bare feet to demonstrate the humility of the Zionist leader. So he's an interesting character, and he founded the Bezalel Art School. Now, to our Google Earth, let's actually go to see some of the stuff. So I just jumped to, that's not where I wanted to go. Hold on. Here we go. In the Israel Museum, the Bezalel Art School. Okay, so there's a small corner at the end of the Judaica Gallery, and this entire wall is dedicated to the Bezalel Art School. A lot of the stuff was made by Zeev Rabban. You've definitely seen some of his stuff, like the poster that says "Come to Palestine." It's a very famous one. These rugs look like the ones we saw with Herzl. And there's this, the Meraglim, the spies holding the grave. A lot of stuff, like there's Israel stuff. There is a nice little, let me see if I can get a little closer. No, I'm kind of stuck here. There are these wooden blocks, and it says on top, Ha'asita hayom be'adamcha ve'artzecha. Have you done anything today for the sake of your nation and your land? Like that's what it's actually asking. Now, Zeev Rabban, who made a lot of paintings that have to do with Israel, said, I will paint the first tree that grows in Jerusalem. In other words, there weren't really planted trees in Jerusalem at the time, and he really wanted to make art that has to do with the land. So he's a famous painter. This is some of the Bezalel Art School collection that's now in the Israel Museum, which is a continuation of the art school. There's even some art that's made out of bombshells, as you can see, like right these from cannons. All right, so that's kind of cool. So that's the first thing I want to show you in the Israel Museum. But I also want to take you to the Bezalel Art School in Jerusalem. Here we go. Now, if you had to guess on what street is the Bezalel Art School, it's on Rehov Schatz, because it's named after Boris Schatz. Like this is here, Rehov Shmuel Nagid, and this is Rehov Schatz, which connects to Rehov Bezalel in Jerusalem. So the Bezalel Art School was originally here. Now it's in the Hebrew University, but this is the architecture department. And on Shmuel Nagid here is now the entrance to Beit HaOmanim. Now look up. There's the menorah. And the painting that I showed you, made by Zeev Rabban, is Boris Schatz and Bezalel on the roof of the Bezalel Art School looking at Yerushalayim. This was his vision. This was his dream. Before Jerusalem looked anything like it looks today, there was like nothing there. And this was his vision. So now you're seeing how this all fits together. Now, I want to show you a picture that I took for you for this tour of two paintings that are exactly where you see these black blank areas with a white frame, because this is a spot for putting paintings. So what are the paintings that are there now today? Let's go back to our slide and I'll show you. These are pictures I took a few weeks ago. The first one is this. And this is basically copying the style of Ephraim Moshe Lilien, who makes biblical pictures. So look at the top right, it says Lilien there. And it shows Avraham, like we're going to read in next week's parasha. He's shown the skies and the heaven and told, this is what your children are going to be like. And he goes down to Egypt and he's told one day you're going to come back. So that's him in Egypt looking at Zion like the shining sunlight. Very similar to the poster for the Fifth World Zionist Congress. I mean, this is the same artist. And notice that the bench below it has the line of Jerusalem, which we'll get to later. Here's the other picture. This is, of course, another copy of the style of more Zeev Rabban than Moshe Lilien, but it's pictures of Jews. This is based on Zeev Rabban, so he's also a famous artist in Bezalel Art School. There's the quote here in the middle of Bezalel, and you see the women, you see the women sitting there and doing the work for the Mishkan. And on the left there is the Bezalel Art School. And then there's a Yemenite Jew who's a very famous character in Zeev Rabban's paintings. So cool stuff. And this is all stuff that, once you get familiar, you'll start seeing it everywhere in Jerusalem, because he's built a lot of stuff in Jerusalem. Even on the YMCA building, there's statues that Zeev Rabban build. So he's a Polish Jew, came to Israel, also a very famous artist. So that's that. Okay. So we've seen the menorah here, and I want to show you more menorah-related stuff that has to do with the Israel Museum and the Bezalel Art School. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to see some other symbols. All right. So let's, and then we're going to like wrap up with the symbols of that have to do with Herzl. So we've jumped back to the Israel Museum in the Judaica Gallery, and this entire wall is Hanukkah menorahs from around the world. I see Google is a little bit stuck. It's not letting me actually move, but that's fine. You see that it says Germany, Eretz Israel, Italy, Algeria, Tunisia, there's Yemen, there's Syria, Russia, Bohemia, Moravia, Holland. Beautiful menorahs. All of them are available online, and they have to do with Hanukkah. Okay, so why are we talking about this? Because let's get back to our slide. One second. So the menorah, which becomes the symbol of Judaism, the menorah and also the Star of David, as we'll see, become symbols of Jewish valor and fighting. And so, like, I'm even showing you just some cool comic books. The ones on the left are Sabraman. Sabraman@gmail.com is actually my first Gmail address. I don't use it, but I still have it. But this is Sabraman. I actually had this comic book. I wish I could find it. It's probably somewhere in my parents' basement. And here's the Hebrew version. It's made by Uri Fink. Everybody knows Uri Fink in Israel. We grew up with him. And on the right is a different comic book character whose name is Uri On, which comes from light, or like the menorah, right? So it's like the menorah is a very powerful symbol of light. So they turn into a Jewish superhero who like fights like these mythic Nazis and all kinds of weird stuff. It's really cool. If you read the comics and look at Uri On the right. As opposed to Sabraman, who's basically the Israeli flag, Uri On has the menorah on his chest, but look at his bracelets. You see the Choshen? He basically has the 12 stones. It's like they took Jewish symbols and they stuck him into there. What does he do with the stones? I have no idea. But it's kind of cool. Maybe he shoots them out and they take animal shapes. I don't know. It's really cool. So we're just looking at some cool stuff about the menorah. But now let's look at the Hanukkah menorahs that are in the Israel Museum, specifically the ones made in Israel by the Bezalel Art School and, of course, by Zeev Rabban, one of the characters I mentioned. So here's one of them, made by Zeev Rabban. You see, it says Bezalel, and look at the topic. This is Acharechen Bau. Look, Vaychatu et hachatzer ve'et kol asher bo. It's a quote directly from the Book of Maccabees about how they came into the chatzer, the courtyard, and cleaned it up and looked for the oil. Right. So that's from the Book of Maccabees, specifically them coming back. Next one. This is a really nice one. It says Bezalel Yerushalayim on the bottom, and look what's happening there. There's the Kohen Gadol who's lighting the menorah, and he took the menorah from the Arch of Titus, which is historically inaccurate, but it's iconic, all right? Because it's a much later menorah. There's somebody there helping him with some of the stuff for the menorah, and on the very top, there's a picture of like a kad, a jar, and it says Bezalel Yerushalayim in ancient Hebrew writing. Now, here it is up close, and the designs inside these medallions on the bottom are based on ancient Jewish coins. And that's the key. This is where I'm going to now connect us. I'm going to segue into some Jewish coins, and then we're going to really put it all together with the symbols of modern Zionism, which are really related to all of this ancient history and archaeology. So it's important that we saw this, even if some of it we're skipping over lightly and some of them we're spending more time on. So let's look at some of these coins. Okay, and then once we're done with the menorah, we'll look at the other symbols from the Byzantine period because it's really cool. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Like you'll sort of get the hang of it. So here's two different sets of Israeli coins. We have the lira on the right, and we have the shekel, which started in the 1970s, on the left. So the lira on the right is based off this coin in the background, which is the shekel, or this one actually says Chatzi shekel, which was used by the Jews during the Great Revolt against the Romans. It's the Machzit shekel. It's the half shekel, the silver that was used for the Beit HaMikdash, for Korbanot and so on, right? So on the right hand, we have the picture from the back of the coin, which says Yerushalayim HaKadosha. And on the left, we have on the shekel, we switched to using shekels instead of lirot. And the image is from the other side of the shekel, and it says shekel Israel, as it says on the coin. So let's look at the coin, at the symbols on the coin. Here's the picture. So this is more of them. So here's a 100 shekel coin, which after inflation was turned into they tried to control inflation, they knocked off 3 zeros. So 100 shekel became 10 agorot. 1 shekel became 1,000. 1,000 shekels became 1 new shekel. Shekel chadash. That's why it's called new shekels, right? I'm saying that for, Tani and Yoni, because this is new for you. A lot of people here remember that, right? I grew up with the shekel, but the new shekel. I remember the shekel. Okay. So I want to talk about this picture of the menorah, which is the symbol of the Bank of Israel, because this is the first time in history, as far as we know, that a picture of the menorah was actually drawn. And this picture was made by the last Hashmonai king, whose name was Matityahu Antigonos. He was killed by King Herod. Now, when King Herod besieged Jerusalem, attacked the last Maccabee king, Matityahu made these special small bronze coins. We only have about 30 of them in existence. Very few of them were made because he was under siege. And what's interesting is what is the picture on the other side of the coin. So on the right, you see the menorah, right? But you look at the left and like, what is that? Now, it's such a sloppy coin because it was made quickly and under siege, but you see that there is actually a dotted circle where the picture is inside, and they even missed the center of the coin. So you're not even seeing the whole picture. But what is that a picture of? You've already seen it. You saw it on the Arch of Titus. Look, 1 second. Here we go. You're looking at the Shulchan. Now, in simple Hebrew, a Shulchan is a table. Here's a table. What's so exciting about a table? Nothing much, right? But the Shulchan and the menorah together are the symbols of Kehuna. They are the symbols of the priesthood. And Matityahu Antigonos was the last standing Maccabee king. And he wants to send a message using pictures to say, hey guys, you know that guy Herod who's trying to be the king of the Jews? He's not for real. He's not the real deal. I'm the real deal. I'm a Kohen Gadol. Support me. Rally around me. I'm the real deal. I will maintain the Avodah and the Beit HaMikdash. Work like this is going to be real. Herod's fake, right? He's not the real deal. So that was the first time we find the menorah used with the Shulchan. Okay? And that's on the 10 agorot coin. And you see the menorah and the Shulchan both on the Arch of Titus. Okay? So that's the 10 agorah coin. Okay. Now, there's just a really funny story here, and that's that the 10 agorah coin has a picture of the coin and the contours of the coin. It's like a broken coin. It's a small copper coin. The funny story, this is a true story. In 1990, Yasser Arafat, Yamach Shemo, Yasser Arafat, the head of the PLO, called a press conference to announce that he's going to uncover the secret Zionist plan to take over all of the Middle East and turn it into Israel. What's his proof? See that? He holds up the coin and he says, you see, that's the coast of Israel. And they're planning on basically stamping a menorah on all of the Middle East and conquering all of it. Now, everyone was like, please, sir, don't say this. This is ridiculous. It's a coin. It's a picture of a coin. He said it anyway, which everybody laughed him out of the room. But now we have a funny story, right? Just because of what the coin looks like. So that's a story I just had to tell you. It's a very famous one, and it's a very embarrassing one for him. But for us, it's funny. Okay, moving on. So here's the Machzit shekel coin really quickly. Chetzi shekel, and I just switched it to modern Hebrew. Here's another one which says Shekel Israel, so not the half, it's a bigger coin. And then we have the Bar Kochva coin, which we've probably talked about before. We'll get to it again. On the one hand, you have the Mikdash, and on the right hand, you have a lulav and etrog. Let's first of all look at the text, Lecherut Yerushalayim and Shimon. Okay, now the imagery of what exactly is this thing inside the Beit HaMikdash on the coin of Shimon Bar Kochba, you could debate it. Here's the two options. Okay, and there are different opinions and good reasons for each one. Okay, it's either the Shulchan or the Aron. The Shulchan was actually there in the Second Temple. The Aron wasn't. So how did they draw it? Okay, that's a discussion. And on the right-hand side, you're seeing a lulav and etrog. So that's kind of cool. Now, speaking of symbols from the Byzantine period, and we're going to answer the mystery of what is that square thing. Here it is. So on the left, we have a lulav and etrog. On the right, we have a bread stamp that's in the Israel Museum. You stamp your dough and then you bake it and you know it's Jewish. There's a lulav and etrog on one side and a shofar on the left, right? And there's a mosaic floor from, I think, Hamat Tveria. And it shows you again, lulav and etrog, menorah, shofar, and what is that square thing? You see that? Before we answer what it is, you may already guess what it is. Here's more examples from all over the country. All over the country. We have this around the year 4, 5, 600. The one from Yericho, Shalom al Yisrael doesn't have it, but that thing, that square, shows up in other ones. Like on the second one the second from the left from Beit Alpha, on the one all the way on the top right, and then the one to the left of it. They're all there. What is that thing? Here it is. See it? It's the machta. It's the incense shovel. All of these are symbols that have to do with the avoda, with the service in the Beit HaMikdash. They're all connecting us to it through images that speak to us. Has to do, like we spoke about this in the first tours. Okay, so that's that. And now our final tour, our final part of our tour, I would like to take us to the modern Zionist art and how the ancient archaeology put it together. So just give me a moment. I'm just setting the stage. I'm going to share with you one more thing. I'm taking us really momentarily to London, and then where the I think the third Zionist Congress took place, and then I'm taking us back to the Israel Museum. We're going to wrap up there. So in the British Museum, a place I love to visit virtually as well, in the Assyrian galleries, we're going to meet our important character, and here he is. Okay, see this guy? This is the king of Assyria. Which one? It doesn't matter. They mass-produced these and then just wrote texts on them, and you basically order another one and they write the text for who it is. So there's a bunch of them. They all look the same, and what matters is what you write on them. What I'd like you to notice is how the king of Assyria is dressed. Okay? That's very important. Look at the hat, look at the beard, look at the clothing. This is what I want you to focus on. Why? To find out, let's go back to the Israel Museum, our final stop. So we are in the archaeology wing, and look what we have here. You might walk right past it in the Israel Museum without noticing it, or ignoring the fact that he says look left, and you'll go right instead. This is a shattered stela of Tiglath-Pileser, who is the king who exiled the 10 tribes. And the story that's mentioned here in writing is a story mentioned in Tanakh of when the third to last king of Israel, his name is Menachem ben Gadi, paid him tribute, like protection, right? So that's the story that's actually written here. So it's a really cool story. Why am I showing you this character? Because of our final stop, and that is a modern painting from the Bezalel Art School, which today is in a different part of the museum, but I was able to find it where it used to be. So we're surrounded by Zionist art, like Reuven Rubin is a very famous Israeli artist, and there's lots of posters there of modern Israeli propaganda, which are worthwhile having a whole lecture on just for that. There's a famous award-winning picture of the Last Supper with Israeli soldiers, which this is currently blocking. We can't see it. It's a famous picture. I want to focus on this painting. Okay, this is basically our final stop in the museum. We're going to see a few more slides. Okay, so this is the painting that I want to talk about, and there's our king. See him? There he is. Now, what is this painting? Give me just a moment. I'm going to take us to... Okay, here we are. Okay. So, remember this painting, the invitation to the Fifth World Zionist Congress, made by one of the Bezalel artists named Ephraim Moshe Lilien. And the same guy made this painting called a triptych, because it's three parts, right? There's the two parts on the right and one in the middle. So it's three, right? 1, 2, 3, triptych. Now, this painting is a really interesting one. What's the main event that's happening in this painting? It's a wedding. It's clearly a Jewish wedding, right? Because there's Magen David and there's a talit. But look at the characters that are getting married and that are holding the chuppah. It's really strange. These are Egyptians. And the queen could easily be someone like, I don't know, the Queen of Sheba or something. And the king is an Assyrian king, like we just saw. What is going on here? So I want to tell you what's going on, but I first want to like build it up a little bit because it's a really interesting painting. It's a very big one. It's huge. It's like 3 meters wide. This painting was made as a gift by Moshe Lilien before World War I in 1911, I think. A gift to a gentleman named David Wolffsohn for his 25th wedding anniversary. Okay. Now look, it says it on the bottom. David ben Yitzchak Wolffsohn, Fruma bat Yehuda, Kaf Aleph Tevet Tafresh Mem Aleph. So basically, their wedding was the 21st of Tevet, 1881, and this was given to them in I guess 1906, in their 25th wedding anniversary. So basically, the year the Bezalel Art School was founded, way before World War I. Why is that important? Because you look at we'll get to the center in a moment, but look at the pictures on the right and on the left. You see what you would think those are barbed wires, right? And you think like barbed wires, like Holocaust, death camp. No, 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 no. Those are thorns. Just like in this picture, you see the thorns. And this old man representing the Jew that's been worn down by galut, by exile. Here he is, an old man and woman, the Judaism of exile, worn down. And on the left, you have this young, strong character holding something heavy like Atlas, and one blowing the shofar, right? With these wings, he's like this angel heralding, announcing the Geulah. And that's just what's happening in this picture. There's an angel, has a Magen David on his chest, and he's saying, look, there's Israel. All you have to do is get up and go. Don't get stuck here in Galut. That's what's happening in this picture. And therefore, there's a quote on the top, which is, by the way, there's a mistake in the quote. Mi ted mitzion yishuat Yisrael, beshuv, it's supposed to be beshuv Hashem, not beshuv Elokim, shevut amo, yagel Yaakov yismach Yisrael. A verse talking about coming back to Israel and rejoicing. Now, who is the person in the picture? That's David Wolffsohn. And that's his wife, Fruma, who doesn't look very Fruma in this picture, if you get to catch my drift. But this is an allegorical wedding. It's a metaphor. It's using symbols of ancient history and archaeology to represent an idea, and that's the idea of Zionism and modern Israeli Zionist art. We're talking about 1906. This is before World War I, before World War II. Okay? Jews are just starting to come to Israel. But the vision of Bezalel Art School is to create a Zionist art connected to our roots. And our roots are local. Whether you want to call it like Mesopotamian, Middle Eastern, we're not blue-eyed, blonde Ashkenazim. Like we're local, right? We're not European. That's kind of the message that it's coming to say. Yeah, I know you're blonde, blue-eyed. It's fine. But my point is that he's trying to say the Jews are really, they belong here. They don't come from all over the place. This is where we belong. And that's what the Bezalel Art School focused on a lot. And this was given as a wedding gift to David Wolffsohn, who kind of looks like Herzl. You see that? See, he has the long beard, he looks like Herzl, right? But that's the point, because David Wolffsohn was Herzl's successor, who took over after Herzl died. He was the head of the World Zionist Congress, right? So he's a very important figure. He's actually, you can go visit him in Har Herzl. He's one of the Chelkat Gdulei HaUmah. He's there because he's one of the leaders. He's like number 2 after Herzl. So here he is. So it's a really, really cool picture. Now, I'd like to take us to our final. This is just really fun. We want to talk about what was Herzl's favorite emoji. I want to show you, give me a moment, the actual emojis that Herzl and the Zionist Congress chose for their flag. And then I'm going to show you the rejects. And that's the really cool stuff. The flags and the symbols that didn't make it. Okay, so this is the flag of the state of Israel. It's like the blue and white of the Talit and the Star of David. Wonderful. This is the flag of the Zionist Congress. Now look at the different elements that are going on here. I want you to pay attention to the kind of animal, to the shapes, to the numbers, and to the color. Each one of these is going to have its own symbol, as we'll see. So the lion, Lion of Judah. The Star of David, it became a Jewish symbol. How many small yellow stars of David, and why are they yellow? 7. And why yellow? The menorah, the golden menorah. So it's all here. Now I want to show you flags for the state of Israel that were rejected, that weren't accepted, but they all have that. Blue and white stripes, 7 yellow or golden stars of David. These are all part of the symbols, the emojis, the icons that carry 2,000 years of history. Well, not the Magen David, but they're using the Magen David to talk about the menorah without making the menorah. And there's a reason for that. Okay, now here's some of the symbols that we know, like the emblem of the state of Israel, of Jerusalem, is the lion. And there's other stuff here which I'm not going to get into, but we know the lion. And now let's take a look at other suggestions for the emblem for the state of Israel, which uses the menorah from the Arch of Titus. So the one on the left is actually Zeev Rabban. So we saw some stuff by Zeev Rabban. It's the same guy. And some other really cool ones. Look, lions, the color gold, the number 7, the menorah, blue and white. All of them are here. Okay? Let's see a few more. These ones are very interesting. They have something in common. All 3 of these have something in common. Okay? We're going a tiny bit over time, but I guarantee you it's worth it. We're almost done. Okay? Just look at a couple more pictures. So the picture on the left, if you look very careful, there's a ladder that goes up to heaven. So you know what that is, right? Sulam Yaakov, Jacob's ladder. But underneath it is the burning bush. Behind it is the 2 tablets, the luchot, with the map of Israel. Cool, right? Move to the middle. There's doves instead of lions. There's a scale. There's a menorah. There's gold. And the pasuk that was chosen to represent the values of the state of Israel is Ki bitzdaka yikon kiseh. The throne will be governed by justice. And imagine if that was our value statement on our symbol, what kind of country would it have been today? Right? It's an incredible idea. And then on the right we have menorah, Magen David, gold, number 7, all of that, luchot, written in ancient Hebrew, and the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. So what do all of these have in common? They're religious symbols. They relate to Tanakh. Okay? And finally, I have one more, but first of all, look at these. So we have a sabra on the left. It's very cute. It's kind of weird. I wouldn't want this to be our symbol, and it's not. But the sabra has 7 branches, and it's kind of golden, and the little sabras on top that you eat are the light of the menorah. It's kind of cool, right? And in the middle, you have the branches of the olive tree, right? But it's just like in our symbol, but made into a Magen David in blue and white. So you get this. And finally, this one. Now, this is a very powerful one, which was suggested right after the Holocaust. So it uses the yellow Star of David, and it shows you that the branch, the girth of the Jewish people was cut off. One branch survived. And the menorah is our continuity and our consciousness and our connection to our past, right? And we live on. Now, this is a very, very dark one, no pun intended. So it wasn't chosen, but it was suggested. And the one that was finally chosen, of course, we know. So to wrap up, What is Herzl's favorite emoji? We have a lot of different options for him. We saw the one that he chose, but we saw that there's a journey of 2,000 years of history of symbols that we used and symbols that we dropped, symbols that were adopted. Very interesting story. Okay, so our final words, I'm just going to mention that our next tour, virtual tour, the schedule is all online, is Abraham's Journey from the ancient Near East to the Middle East. I have a version of this in Hebrew for that's going to be this Tuesday, so you can just get in touch, follow, or it's all on my website. But that's going to be Hebrew for homeschool kids, and there's going to be a discount because of the situation we're in currently. But it's going to be the one for adults, of course, is on a different level and it's more extensive, etc. And it's going to be in English. And of course, we have more tours coming up. So this was the third, Avram's Journey. Then Who is Zeus Anyway? A Culture Clash. Like, there's a lot of really fun stuff. And I hope you spread the word. And I'm going to follow up with you, send you an email with resources as soon as I can get around to editing this. So there's also, of course, hopefully, God willing, soon getting back to the museum to do actual tours in the Israel Museum. That's also on the website, and that's also coming up.